Lieutenant Colonel Archer, I have a question to ask you. What does the word ace mean?
Well, ace is a military term, not official, but it means that you've flown combat and on individual combat had destroyed 5 enemy aircraft.
5?
5.
And you're from New York, you said?
Yes, I am.
And at breakfast, you said you also at one time taught at NYU.
Yes, I was there as a professor. I had the ROTC there for 4 years and was a student there also.
Now, I remember doing some research on the Harlem Hellfighters of the First World War, these New York City boys. I'm sorry, New York City men. Once they got behind the Cotton Curtain, the Mason-Dixon line, they had a problem of adjusting. Did you have a similar problem?
Yes, in fact, part of the discussion I always make is that what happened to me and to the Tuskegee Airmen also happened to my father in World War I. He was a part of the 15th Infantry, which went overseas, and the American commanders there refused them, and they fought with the French. Ended up coming home and had to change their uniform from French to American to march up Fifth Avenue. I went into the service the same way in 1941, before Pearl Harbor, because I wanted to defend the country. I thought we would get into a war, and I took the tests for the cadets, was refused after I passed with a ridiculously good mark, and fine. So I ended up in the infantry, and I was in Georgia at a place called Camp Wheeler as an instructor in telegraphy and radio field communications when the Tuskegee experiment, to make sure you understand there were 2 experiments. The Tuskegee Airmen one was completely different, that I was accepted for that and ended up going in 1942 to Tuskegee.
Did you do any training at Selfridge Field in Mount Clemens, Michigan?
Yes. When we graduated from Tuskegee, we flew the P-40, the first pilots that came in, and we went to Selfridge Field, Michigan, where we were doing what we call overseas combat training. You'll notice there was a small difference there. In those days, we were called the pursuit squadrons, and later on, we became fighter squadrons. That was based on the fact that the American military based their theory of combat on pursuit, hot pursuit. It's also the reason why the Tuskegee Airmen were very successful. We never followed that. But I ended up at Selfridge Field, Michigan, and we considered Selfridge Field as our second home outside of Tuskegee.
Now, General Theus mentioned you had your own pilots, our own mechanics. Am I led to believe that if you took your plane up and you had mechanical difficulties and you were over Mississippi, you had to return to Tuskegee for our mechanics to
The idea was you should try to return to Tuskegee. It was only 2 or 3 bases in the United States that we would even feel welcomed at. That was at Detroit, up here, Selfridge Field, a field in Jersey, which is now Newark Air Force Base, and Tuskegee. In fact, he was told to abandon it. In fact, we tell stories about some of the things that happened to us when you had to land at another base. I had to land in Mississippi once, which was completely discouraging. And it was that sort of thing. And when I talk about our people, and General Theus talks about our people, he's talking about African Americans who did everything for us. My crew chief, a fellow by the name of Richard Blevins, to this day I still admire what this young staff sergeant, 2 years younger than me at the time, who was trained in one airplane and crewed 4, P-40, P-39, P-47, and the P-51 without retraining. So when we're talking about the Tuskegee Airmen, frequently we give the pilots all the credit when they are due some, but really the soul of the organization came in the enlisted men and officers that supported us.
Prisoner of war, World War II.
And you were shot down?
Over southern France, strafing radar stations, August the 12th, 1944. Okay.
Now, once you were put into the POW camp, how could you were you able to convince the Germans that you were a pilot?
Well, they had to, because when I bailed out, I landed right next to the guy who shot me down.
Oh.
You ever see the guy sitting in a seat with the 20 millimeters going off? I landed within 20 feet of him.
And how were you received by the other white American
Now
pilot?
that's the story. When I got to Stalag Luft 3, 80 miles east of Berlin, there were 5,000 American flying officers that had been shot down over German-occupied territory. Quite naturally, when I walked in, many of these men had been there 2 or 3 years, North African. They questioned whether a black man was flying, but about 2 weeks later, a bomber crew came in from Italy, out of the 15th Air Force. They saw me, they came up and ran and grabbed me and said, "God, if you red tails had been with us, we would not have been shot down." The reputation had already started. Quite naturally, it spread throughout the whole camp. Well, Jeff was a red tail.
Now, you were born in Detroit, am I correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Now, how did you adjust to life in the
In the
military
Okay.
the Mason-Dixon, below the
I
Mason-Dixon?
understand. I spent 4 years at Clark College in Atlanta. So I knew the South and I knew the segregation. And all my life, my parents were from Georgia, naturally. Every summer I'd go down to Atlanta, so I knew the South. I knew how to cope with it. No big deal. My attitude was to survive and survive. Stay with the system. Fight the system from the inside.
Now, what words of advice do you have to the young African-American students here at Western who are in aviation engineering? Any words of wisdom you can give them? Or share
Be
with them?
prepared. Be prepared. Do the best you can do, the best of your ability, and succeed. You can do anything you want. Today, the world is wide open to you. If you don't succeed, it's your fault. If you don't succeed, it's your fault. Don't try to blame somebody else that you're not on the ball.
General Theus, let me ask you a question. What does the double V mean? What did it mean during the Second World War?
Well, it meant victory both over the enemy, the Nazis, and victory over discrimination and segregation in the armed forces and within the United States.
Now, you said you were from Michigan.
I am.
And
Now,
where were you originally? Where were you born? I mean,
well, Doctor, I grew up in a little town outside of Chicago by the name of Robbins, Illinois. It happened to have been a moderately priced income, small town, all African American.
so when you went to Tuskegee, you had no problems of adjusting to the form of the social life, the political life of African Americans from northern Robin, Illinois to Tuskegee?
Well, I should tell you that my story is a little bit different from those of the other Tuskegee Airmen. I entered the old Army Air Corps as a private, and I went first to Keesler Field, Biloxi, Mississippi. But now, as I will mention later in my talk today, that when we saw that there was a war on the horizon, there were many young men, African-American men, who wanted to join in the fight against the Germans, but they wanted to join in and fight as combat pilots. And so many of them, once the barriers were broken, and I'll detail that as to how this came about, but once the barriers were broken, so many of these young, well-qualified, highly motivated young African Americans flocked to this program. And so many of them came that some had to be diverted to Keesler Field, Biloxi, Mississippi, where I gave them basic military training. I was a first sergeant there. They had to have that kind of training before going on to Tuskegee for flight training. And so I then became, a part of the Tuskegee Airmen movement, and later on, then I was commissioned and then moved over to Tuskegee to join the group over there.
Now, how many gentlemen who were affiliated with the Tuskegee Airmen?
Well, there were a lot of them, really. We graduated about 950 pilots from the program. Of those 950 pilots, about 450 of them saw action. They were deployed overseas and, of course, engaged the enemy. But you must keep in mind that for every pilot that we had, there was some 12 to 15 other support personnel who were needed. We had to have our own doctors, our own mechanics, our own truck drivers. All of those kinds of people were just needed to make the entire squadron function. So you say how many? What we have, as I mentioned, about 950 pilots, but then 12 to 13,000 support people.
You said our own mechanics, our own medics, our own...
Doctor, I did, and I said that deliberately because this whole experiment, the Tuskegee experiment, was designed to have an organization consisting of only African Americans. And so when I say our own, I'm referring to African Americans. So the whole unit was African American, and we had to train and employ not only the pilots who did the fighting, but all of the people who did the support work as well.